So I got a question for you. How would you define design thinking? It's one of those words, it's one of those phrases, words that I hear all the time. And I often, when I hear it, I pause and have to take a quick survey of who is using the word and try to make some inference of like what they might mean in that context, because it is one of those words that gets thrown around and used and abused in countless different ways. I kind of find it frustrating. It's a word that to me carries a lot of meaning and carries a lot of value, but it's one that gets used and abused, and it's defined a million different ways depending on who you ask, and that to me is frustrating. So on this channel, I have a definition of what I think design thinking is, and I picked this definition up from someone that I admire greatly and has been a pillar of even defining what it even is to begin with. So a quick story on that. But before I give you the definition that I'm drawn to and that I hold dear, I thought it'd be fun to just explore some of the ways that I hear design thinking being used, and just why that kind of sometimes drives me a little bit bonkers. So when I hear a designer or a practicing designer, especially in the graphic design space, when I hear them say design thinking, I often hear it in the context of, I am a designer who is thoughtful. I think through what I'm trying to design, and it's the piece that I'm presenting or that I've created is a thoughtful piece. Yeah. So that might be a definition that you bump into every once in a while as well. Design community saying, hey, design thinking is about the designer actually being thoughtful about their work. That is not the definition that I find helpful. It's not the one that I use, and it's not the one that to me delivers the value that is often described when we talk about design thinking. I guess before we go any further, what is that value that design thinking is even offering or promising? So one of the ways that I often will try to understand a concept, especially like design thinking or innovation or human-centered design, when we talk about a methodology or process, I try to boil it down to what is the promise that this idea is making me. And so design thinking, to me, is the promise of creativity, the promise of seeing something in a different light. Innovation is the promise of bringing new ideas to market. Human-centered design is the promise of design informed by the needs of the observable needs of a user or the felt needs of a user. So all of those ideas are promising something, and I try to boil it down to what is the distinct value proposition of this particular idea. And to me, design thinking is promising a new way to see a problem, a new way to go about solving a problem. It's creativity that is maybe at the core of what design thinking is promising. So the notion of a designer being thoughtful about their work doesn't live up to that criteria, in my opinion. Another thing that I often run into is, so flip on the MBA side of the crowd, I will often hear design thinking as a defined or described in a way that just means that, hey, I am a business professional and I'm going to be creative, so therefore I'm design thinking. They kind of conflate those ideas and kind of like push away all of the discipline of design, because design thinking isn't talking about the discipline or the craft of design. It's talking about a methodology or a way of thinking. So that the business community, and I'm speaking to myself, I've got a business degree background. That's the world that I'm familiar with, and I hear it. I hear that's how design thinking is described. If I'm not a practicing designer, this is a way for me to be creative in the things that I am responsible for within the business. Again, that doesn't, to me, fully satisfy or meet the criteria of design thinking, or that promise that that it is making to me. So those are some definitions that I bump into quite a bit. I would love to hear your definition of design thinking is. Drop that in the comments below. So it can be really frustrating if you are a designer in the discipline or the craft of design, whether it's graphic design or industrial design, interaction design. When you hear the word design thinking and are intuiting it as this is me being thoughtful about my work, and then clashing with that when you bump into someone from the business community or the business side that's has a completely different understanding of the word design thinking. Back in grad school, I had the fortune of sitting in on a lecture from Bill Moggridge, who was asked by some, pretty well-to-do faculty member to define design thinking. They asked it in a way that you got the sense that they were trying to corner Mr. Moggridge into a definition of design thinking that decoupled it from making anything or actually seeing any sort of movement. So in the academic space, there's often this tension between design thinking and design doing. I don't think it's necessarily a conversation worth having, especially right now as we're talking about the definition of design thinking. But Mr. Moggridge gave a definition that at the time kind of like hit me right square between the eyes. Like, yeah, this rings true. This is the value that I find in this approach. And he defined it like this. Design thinking is a multidisciplinary approach to solving problems using design methodology. And he just left it at that. For me, that is an absolutely beautiful definition of design thinking. You don't hear any talk about the craft of design. You don't hear the mention of a designer. You don't hear the mention of an MBA student. It's just a multidisciplinary approach to solving a problem using design methodology. So what I love about that is a couple different aspects about that definition that really make design thinking deliver on that promise of a new, different way to see or solve a problem. First and foremost, it's multidisciplinary. So if you know anything about the IDEO world where Mr. Moggridge kind of gave birth to these ideas, they'll often describe innovation or design thinking as living at the intersection of is it feasible, is it desirable, and is it viable? So can I actually make it? Do people actually want it? And can this actually work within the business? Can we actually do this in a way that is financially a viable solution? If you are looking through that lens of trying to deliver new value that has to live at the intersection of viability, feasibility, and desirability, you're automatically talking about an interdisciplinary team, a cross-functional team. You got to be able to work with sales. You got to be able to work with designers. You have to be able to work with engineering. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be able to deliver something to the market that you can deliver with some sort of margin and that people actually want. It takes a team of people. So if that is the lens that you're working through, design thinking being a multidisciplinary approach just nails it. It's the approach to take in order to deliver that kind of value. There are lots of other kinds of value you can create in business, and that's fine, but to me, that's what design thinking is specifically for. If you want to take something to market, you have to bear in mind those three things: desirability, feasibility, and viability. So design thinking is a great tool to use in order to bring those cross disciplines together. So that's a cross-disciplinary approach to solving a problem using design methodology. So rewind a bit. The solving a problem and design methodology, those kind of go hand in hand. If you've caught another video where I just define the word design and what it is, you already know that this is based in the idea of solving a problem for someone else, another human being, with a set of constraints. So the notion of design thinking being a multidisciplinary approach, solving a problem using design methodologies, one can assume that then if I'm solving a problem, it's for somebody else. And if I'm thinking about a design methodology, then that's going to be informed by what kind of methods does it take to get to know either the problem space, the constraints, or the people that I'm solving for. And there's a whole bunch of methodologies that are live in the design world that are aimed to fill those specific needs. So that to me is a solid definition of design thinking. You notice there wasn't any hexagons talking about observation and synthesis and prototyping and so on and so forth. No, that is a method that you could use. So here's what I love about defining design thinking as a multidisciplinary approach to solving a problem using design methodologies is that you can use that methodology, you can use that approach, that way of thinking and the way of problem solving in virtually any part of the business that is stuck. So you want to figure out how to work on a process to make a particular thing easier to do within your organization. Well, you can use design thinking to do that. It doesn't have to be a customer-facing result. It can be refining an internal process that in order to make that process smoother and easier, it takes a cross-functional way to solve that problem. Design thinking is an excellent approach to problem solving. If in order to solve that problem, you need a cross-functional solution. So if in order to solve this problem, you need marketing involvement, you need engineering, if you need finance, if you need sales, if you need a cross-discipline team, design thinking is a great tool in order to solve those problems. So hey, if you found this definition of design thinking helpful, hit subscribe, share this with somebody, and like I said, I would love to hear your definition of design thinking in the comments below, and I look forward to reading those.